everybody. It is Steve, your friendly neighborhood lawn gnome. Welcome back to another video over here on That's Comical. And if you're watching and it happens to be a Wednesday, happy new comic book day. Oh boy, look at this, everybody. We've got a whole bunch of That's Comical crew here tonight to continue the Energon Universe Ultimate Journey. But before we do that, I've got to, of course, say hello to everybody in the chat. We've got Cammie, we've got Andy, and we've got Teddy. Everyone, how are we today?
Killing it.
Not bad.
Pretty good.
All right, so we had, meaning Cammie, Teddy, and I had an amazing discussion launching the Ultimate Journey Energon Universe with the first story arc of Void Rivals, but I think we can all collectively say that we were very excited for tonight's recording because we are going to dive into the second book that is part of the Energon universe. And let me tell you, everybody, if Void Rivals did not get the hype until Jetfire showed up in issue #1, let me tell you, when we found out that Transformers was going to be coming out just a few months later, oh boy, let me tell you, people, the hype was real. Not just because of the fact that this was part of a brand new universe that was being built by Robert Kirkman, but it was the fact, and not because of the fact that it was based on a truly beloved franchise that everyone, if you are truly an 80s child and beyond, know and love. But I think we can all agree that one of the major reasons why everyone was excited about this specific title was because the person who was tapped to do the writing and the artwork was none other than the man who truly can say that he loves comics so dearly because it shows in every bit of his work, the great Daniel Warren Johnson, and colors by Mike Spicer. So before we get into this chapter and this section of the Energon universe, I would really like to dive into everybody's introductions to Transformers because we are all not of the same generation, but we are relatively close. I mean, technically we are part of the same generation. We're all millennials in some way, even though I consider myself more of a Gen Xer, but that's beside the point. But we all came into this world at a different time, and Transformers is something that we all discovered one way or another. So let's start with Andy, because Andy, you have not been a part of this ultimate journey, so I'd really like to know about your introductions to Transformers.
Yeah, I mean, I've been a fan of Transformers as long as I can remember, mostly through the toys as a really little kid. Obviously, that's the franchise, right? I would say my knowledge of like the show and the wider Transformers lore expanded a lot when I was in high school. I had I had a friend, he used to play rhythm guitar in my band actually, who got really into Transformers. I forget why, but he got really into them when we were in high school, and he got like a fan translation of the animated movie and it was like superior to what had been like released in America, whatever. And like we all got together to watch it. It was very good. I've had a couple of friends who are really, really deep into Transformers. So I feel like my kind of knowledge of it is by osmosis through toys when I was younger, and then being around people who are diehard fans. And having seen, I also saw like the Michael Bay films, right? Like when those came out, whatever, they were garbage, but like I like
I think we can all agree that even though it's not a great film, the opening action sequence of Revenge of the Fallen is badass.
I'm not there. I got nothing bad to say. Look, if you want big budget. Anyway, neither here nor there for this video. But the long and the short of it is I consider myself somewhat of an informed casual Transformers fan by osmosis from the people I know who are like deep into like high quality models, lore, the whole history of Transformers. And it was really, really fun reading this story because it felt like going into it again for the first time, which is how I feel every time I've ever done a Transformers thing. And this one, spoiler alert, I really liked. Really liked. So that's me. That's
All
me.
right, our pop culture queen, Cammy. I'm pretty sure you've got a story that is very, very familiar to me. You're just about a month apart in terms
We
of when
are.
we were born.
Yeah.
So
Well, I'm definitely the elder bean in the room. So I have been watching Transformers since its inception. I will say though, as a kid, I watched it simply because it was part of a lineup, of cartoons. I am of that generation where we had really cool cartoons back to back to back to back, and spent the majority of our Saturdays in front of the television. I too, though, did play with the action figures. So I was one of the few chicks on the playground that played with the boys, and girls just, I don't know, they were just weird and they didn't get me. So I played TMNT and Transformers. And eventually, I know this is going to sound weird because Power Rangers came out later, but Power Rangers with the boys, I was the video game girl. So for me, Transformers was a regular part of, syndication television. And then later, as I transformed into an adult with adult money, I just had to have the cartoon. So of course, Transformers is part of my catalog. I do watch it regularly, simply because now I really watch cartoons. I'm an avid watcher of the storyline, and so I can learn about the characters and their connection and that sort of thing. I will disagree with Andy just slightly. I do love the Transformers movies. They are not perfect by any means. However, I think that for a kid growing up in that era, I think seeing a big epic version of your Transformers on the big screen was super cool. I have a wild little crush on Shia LaBeouf. I always have since his days on Nickelodeon. So maybe I'm a little biased, but I had a lot of fun with those movies. They, as of course the series went on, some were better than others. But yeah, so seeing it in comic pages, I was super stoked to know that it was going to be part of this Energon universe is even better. And to talk to you guys about it, come on, this girl is winning.
Teddy, how about you?
I'm the complete opposite of both. I knew nothing about Transformers. I had no upbringing with Transformers. I was at Toys R Us. I saw a Transformer toy. It's a vehicle that turned into a robot. That's pretty cool. But this was my intro to Transformers. And I know they both had a background somewhat in Transformers, but this was my intro. This was amazing. This was perfect. And there's definitely more that meets the eye when it comes to this comic. That no pun intended.
I was just about to say that.
I at least know about that. But like I know, like I always listen to theme songs, so I know the theme song of Transformers. It's pretty much what I know, but we'll talk about the story as we get on, but if this is what Transformers really is, I cannot wait to learn more about it from past comics, shows, movies, etc. And I'm really looking forward to this.
So for me, Transformers, I will definitely say yes, I did watch the cartoon when I was really, really young, but I do weirdly remember myself preferring GoBots over Transformers. And maybe that was just because of the fact that there weren't that many they needed to keep track of. But what I do remember about Transformers was, as a 3-4-year-old kid watching that show, that was a very complex cartoon. It was back to what I can recall is it was really one of the first serialized cartoons before cartoons now became more serialized. I mean, most television really wasn't even serialized back then, but this was definitely, of course, anime based. Anime television is very serialized, so clearly taken from that. But of course, I remember the toys. You don't forget that theme song. I will definitely say when I got older into college, that was when I first saw the 1987 animated film. And my God, that is one of the better animated films that I ever seen. I mean, like, wow, you really go as far as you could do to spoil. You know what? I'm not even going to say it because I want Teddy to see that movie. He really should.
I almost did the same thing. I
Yeah.
caught myself too.
Yeah, but my goodness, and what a cast that's in that movie. Eric Idle from Monty Python, Leonard Nimoy, Judd Nelson. What a soundtrack. It's one of the best soundtracks for an animated film. And yes, especially because I do want to mention, everyone, this was a funny thing that we're actually doing this first story arc discussion tonight, because just this past week, the latest issue came out, issue 24, and it was the final issue that Daniel Warren Johnson did. And it's only appropriate that we start talking about Transformers now. And, I'm just really excited to see what's going to happen further on. But when I was reading that last issue, oh, you better believe that Stan Bush's The Touch was in my head. Well, because it definitely felt like it was part of it. But in terms of the live action movies, and even some of the, like I said, recently I saw Transformers 1, the animated film. I thought it was a lot of fun, very much enjoyed it. And yes, some of the live action Michael Bay films are not the worst. I mean, I think the first one is a lot of fun. I think Bumblebee is a great movie, especially because of the fact that they really wanted to pull the nostalgia, and they actually did get, Peter Cullen as always to voice Optimus, and they did get Frank Welker to voice Soundwave, because when I was watching Bumblebee and you see that scene in Cybertron and you see Soundwave come out and you hear that Decepticons, like when you hear that sound, it's like you get so excited. But no, I was very excited to read this book, not just because of the creative team that was part of it, and not just because of the fact that this was going to be part of a brand new universe, because you have to remember, and Teddy knows this well, I'm on fire and so hyped for all the Energon Universe and the Ghost Machine Universe.
Yeah.
But I just knew that Transformers was going to be something special, because, why would you want to screw up a franchise like this? And I'm going to say it has been done, unfortunately, but when I read this first issue, my jaw was on the floor, because this is exciting. It is fast-paced. It's got all the nostalgia that you want, but at the same time, these are not your Transformers that you grew up with as a kid. This is your childhood grown up with you. So welcome home. You're going to have a lot of fun here. So that's basically where I am with the comic book. No, the first story arc is phenomenal. It is, you cannot wait for the next issue. You get so excited when you flip through these pages and you see all of these famous faces that you recall. And if you're meeting them for the first time, you're having a blast. I mean, Teddy, I'm just going to ask you the flat out question. How awesomely horrible and stupid is Starscream?
Yeah. Pretty much.
I love Starscream. I really, really do. He was always my favorite villain.
Yeah, same.
So we basically open up the story with the Ark, the ship that the Autobots had, crash landing. And then we see Spike and his friend Carly, who is an entirely new character. Spike, by the way, is from the original cartoon. So it was really cool to see him. And basically, he and Carly discover these not motionless, gigantic robots all over the ship, and they're trying to figure out what they are and where they came from. And then all of a sudden, we notice two sides waking up. We are introduced to the Autobots and the Decepticons. And that is where you first discover that this is going to be a very not your childhood's Transformers, because the first thing that happens, which breaks my heart, is Starscream wakes up and shoots Bumblebee right in the face. And I'm like, shit, what just happened? And could this possibly be a little play on how annoying Bumblebee was in the movies? Maybe, but I'm not going to try and pull conspiracy theories out in a world where conspiracy theories are running rampant right now, especially because of the past week. But no, I was just like, whoa, this is freaking intense.
I had the same thought about why they might have been so brutal with Bumblebee. And I'm laughing when we're talking about our intros to Transformers, and Steve makes reference to the Bumblebee movie, and I'm like, sorry to all Bumblebee fans out there. This comic takes a turn for you very quickly. I think you're entirely right, Steve, about the tone of it, the way it pulls you in. That first issue, and I'm sure you guys are going to agree, a big part of that for me was the heart of humanity in it and the way we draw in the characters who are not Transformers. Obviously, we start with them. It centers the story there. And I think it gives us a little bit of a grounding that lets people who might be new to Transformers, and Teddy, I'd love to hear you talk about this, and I'm sure you will, but let them know that there's something more grounded to this. It's not Rock'em Sock'em Robots, right? There's going to be real personality, there's going to be real stakes, and you're going to find out as it goes on that the Transformers themselves are also really interesting. But I was really enthralled from issue 1 of this. It's that breakneck pace that keeps you turning, and then the cliffhangers at the end of every issue. If you can even call them cliffhangers, it's more like next page, next page. Like
Yeah.
the story is not done yet.
And let's also say that another one of the bigger driving forces, and again, it's not the main driving force of the book, but it literally is the icing on the cake. Daniel Warren Johnson's art it's dynamic. I mean, Andy and I just had a massive conversation about the late Jack Kirby, the goat of comic books. But I mean, Daniel Warren Johnson's art is, it looks so primitive, like a child just doing rough sketches on a piece of paper. But my God, there is so much life and so much edge to his work as we progress with the different story arcs, because he only does the artwork on the first one and then just becomes the initial writer on the book until issue 24. But his artwork is so unique, and I love how he really gives these books so much life. Not just Transformers, but a lot of other work that he does.
His artwork is vibrant. It's very energetic. It jumps off the page at you. And like you were saying, even though it has this kind of childlike feel, it's still it pops off the pages at you, and it makes the story that much more exciting. But what I love about this story too is that you have a fresh start. It's like a clean slate with the Transformers. You don't have to come in as a reader with any prior knowledge of the Transformers, the lore, the universe. It kind of just sets us up for, just this whole new world with our characters. And there's some basis of understanding, in terms of the basics of what the Transformers are. Of course, your Autobot versus Decepticon kind of feel. But after that, it's like the gloves are off. Let's go. It's war, and it gets you just like right in the story. It's kind of brutal at times.
And speaking of brutal, the last page on the first issue, and that was like, oh my God, Starscream, because he literally picks up a man who ends up being Carly's father, and he literally squishes him to death. And I was like, I'm not kidding. My first reaction when I read that the very first time back in October of 2023, I was like, what just happened? What is going on here? I'm like you said, Cammy, the gloves are off. This book was intense.
Yeah, I was like, oh shit, am I watching Terrifier or reading Transformers here?
And then we go straight into issue number 2, and things just, what I like about issue number 2 is, even though there is some really great action, there's also some very slow, very human and heartfelt moments, because I think one of the nicest parts is actually right in the beginning, because towards the end of the first issue, Carly and Spike introduce themselves to Optimus, because he tries to show them that you guys just witnessed something really crazy, but we are not all bad. And that's also when they get introduced to characters like Cliffjumper and Ratchet. I mean, these are all familiar faces. And Optimus immediately, because he is truly one of the ultimate good guys, he believes that we have to protect the humans just as much as we have to take care of ourselves. And at the beginning of issue number 2 is when he accidentally steps on a deer and kills it. And he's like, you want to know what that reminded me of? That was definitely right out of the Iron Giant, when the gun killed the deer and he got really upset and didn't understand. And what was really nice was how Spike tried to console him and say, listen, you didn't mean to do it. It was an accident. Don't worry about it. But it just shows how much Optimus really cares about happiness and family and life. And that's another thing that I really like about Daniel Warren Johnson. He knows how to not just give you truly in-your-face action, but he also really knows how to give you truly heartfelt moments. Teddy can definitely speak to that when we talk about Daniel Warren Johnson's work from earlier this year with The Moon Is Following Us. That's
I was I was actually going to mention that. I was going to mention how there are times when I'm reading this comic and I forget that they're robots because he really humanizes them, and he you have emotion, you're heartfelt with robots, and it's I didn't when I was reading this I didn't know what to expect. That first issue was brutal. The second one, and I really felt like Optimus Prime, like I felt a little like Superman-esque with the way that Daniel Warren Johnson portrays him a little bit. I just found it interesting.
He's written with such vulnerability in this, and I think that really drives his character. In the past, we've always known Optimus as kind of the big brother. He oversees everyone, and he's kind of the lifeblood, of the Autobots. But here, you get like a real sense of humanity within him, because you sense he understands the gravity of the fragility of the earth. He understands the dynamic of war and the price of war, and what it means to kind of step in and say, hey, you know what, I'm not only going to protect my Autobots here, but I've got these kids and I've got your world, and it's my job to protect it. And in a way, it just kind of reawakens my love for Optimus Prime. I've always loved him as a character, but here I just want to embrace him even more and just shovel in whatever he has to offer in the next issue.
And for you, Cammie, as someone who talks about another nostalgic book, TMNT, Saturday Morning Adventures, and you talk about when you're reading the book, you hear the voices from the please tell me you hear Peter Cullen when you're reading this book. Like, you know all the voices. Like, when I was reading the scenes with Clipjumper, I hear Casey Kasem. It's like, I love the fact that we hear those voices.
And that's the beauty of this, I think, for those of us that did grow up in that era, is that you will have these amazing voices, these soundtracks that you carry throughout life, and it just plays right into these pages. There's just some characters that they're iconic voice actors that follow these characters, and yes, they pop into your head immediately. And for me, like Teddy was alluding earlier, I know this theme song through and through. I start every issue kind of in my head singing it and then I just go into these amazing voice actors, and it carries the story in a different way too.
So of course, Starscream doesn't want to sit around. He wants to immediately start going on a conquest. And also, the word Energon starts officially getting thrown around from the Autobots and the Decepticons. The Decepticons obviously want to get it for the purposes of conquering, and Optimus Prime wants to find the Energon for the sake of bringing the rest of his Autobots back online. But Starscream has a mission in the beginning, and he wants to kill the squishies, as he likes to call them. And we officially get a very interesting moment in the middle of the second issue. We got a couple of members of the armed forces trying to shoot down Starscream. And just like Jetfire showing up in Void Rivals, we see a certain familiar name show up as one of the pilots in those jets, and it just happens to be Duke from G.I. Joe. So clearly we know who is also part of this Energon universe. But that's a great scene. It is unbelievably exciting. And of course, at this point in time, the Decepticons seem to be beating the Autobots to the punch, because we've got Soundwave online, and Skywarp is officially brought online. And of course, we all know, if you remember who Soundwave is, he turns into the boombox, and he's got those little robots inside his chest. So we get introduced to Laserbeak and Frenzy and all these other characters. So it's a massive nostalgia wave, because you're seeing all of these familiar faces, but they're not necessarily doing familiar things. And that's what makes it all the more exciting.
Don't forget what Starscream discovers about humans.
Yeah.
They're squishy.
Yes, they're squishy.
I don't know if I like that term. It just,
No,
I
it's
don't know.
terrifying, and that terrified me while reading it.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, that just appeals to the grossness that is sometimes horror that I avoid. So I'm like, squishy, really? It does its job because it freaks me out every time I read it. I will say that is something that I do love though about this Energon series is when they do introduce a new storyline, it's just enough and not too much. It's like it doesn't ruin another series for you to read, but it introduces a character and gets you excited about that. So in Void Rivals, it did it for Transformers for us, and now in Transformers, we're seeing that with Duke, and eventually I know we'll get, you know, the others that to come to follow suit. But I just think it's really cool how they integrate it and just kind of get you prepared for what's to come. It's
Yeah.
fun as a reader.
And so, of course, as the story progresses, Spike actually finally gets his father to get officially encounter the Autobots. And of course, you know, the humans are terrified because of what the Decepticons have been doing. And Carly also officially learns that her dad was killed at the hands of the Decepticons, and she doesn't really know what to think, but she clearly is out for blood. But of course, the most important thing about Carly's story is how she developed this really great instantaneous bond with Cliffjumper. And that's one of the few things that I know that I like about the Transformers, especially when you remind yourself of the cartoon. The thing that's interesting about the Transformers that they're all different shapes and sizes. And it seems to me that the smaller the Autobot is, the more connected the humans are. Because I remember in the cartoon, Spike's son Daniel had such, and even Spike had such a friendship with Bumblebee because he was one of the smaller Transformers. And you could definitely see like characters like Cliffjumper, and you know, eventually we'd see a couple of other ones, but we'll get into that a little bit later. But I just think like the smaller the Transformer, the more friendship bonds the humans make. I don't know if it's just me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's a little bit of a trend to it. I do think that the only place where I push back notably is where we're introduced to the quote unquote humanity of the Transformers is in that moment with Optimus and the deer. And Optimus is obviously the polar opposite of the small Transformer, but having a very human connection. But by and large, I think you're right. And I think that kind of speaks to there's a little bit of a reality both to the original source material and to this, which is maybe there's something that just that tiny bit more relatable. And also maybe it helps that it's a car that they would have been driving themselves anyway, albeit a super fucking cool one. So like you can see why that might happen, but it speaks to that thing that I think is really important that makes this comic work, which is there is a sort of difficult to put your finger on believability to it, if that even makes sense based on the content of what we're talking about. But it's like it remains grounded in a very real way, and we'll talk about some of the later issues and where that happens. But the peril seems very, very down to earth. The responses of the humans seem very, very real, and I mean the way that they interact with the Transformers when they first meet them, other than you know our immediate lead heroes, is a kind of understandable fear. And everything about it is just grounded in such an odd way. But I largely agree with what you say, Steve, and I think that that's just kind of like an outcropping of that broader kind of way it's being written.
And Starscream is definitely having a really tough time trying to do good things with his team. Like he keeps losing battles. Even Jetfire shows up and has a big fight with him and says, "You are not the Starscream you used to be. You used to be something better, and now you're turning into a tyrant." And I still love the fact that he can't seem to keep his Decepticons under control. And I love how eventually he has his Scar moment from the Lion King when Soundwave says, "You know that Mega don't say his name." I just love the fact that, you know, that was one of my biggest questions. Like, where is Megatron? And so I love the fact that they keep trying to reference him. He's clearly not there. And that's the funniest thing. If you remember the cartoon, you know that even though Starscream is such a kiss ass to Megatron, all he wants is for Megatron to disappear so he can control the Decepticons. And I still remember the movie when, you know,
Well, we just leave it there. I guys, the way they handled Megatron in this comic
even
is
though he's barely
so
there.
great. It's so threatening because everybody who knows anything about Transformers is like, there's a story here. What what happened? Where is he? What's going on? And we get those. I was just scrolling through trying to see. It's in issue 2 is the first time we quote unquote see him. There's this one frame where Optimus is like filling in Spike on a little bit of the history of the planet. It's like we've
Yeah.
been fighting, with fighting with Starscream among others, and there's like this silhouette shot of Megatron, and then we just don't talk about him again for a while. It's so it's like I mean, I'm sure there's a trope for this, but it's Jaws, right? It's like there's just this looming kind of thing, and there's just so much mystery around it, and it
Yeah.
was the perfect choice. I love
It's
everything
like
about how
Jaws.
Megatron's
It's like
handled here.
King Kong. It's like
Mhm.
Dracula. It's like the presence is there, and it's looming. But
Yes.
we don't know if or when we're ever going to actually see this big thing. In this
Mhm.
case, the true leader of the Decepticons. And I also love how after the 2 failures, Soundwave and Starscream have this massive argument about the Energon and how they're like saying, well, it's going to be how they want to keep it for themselves. And meanwhile, we're not going to give any to Skywarp and we're running out of it. And so Skywarp is suddenly like this little 5-year-old kid tugging on Starscream saying, where's my Energon? I want mine too. And so Soundwave and Starscream are like, oh, shut up, Skywarp. And they tear him in half.
Yeah.
And they mount his body on the wall and say, here's our Energon. I'm like, wow, they're squishing human beings and they're literally eating their own. I'm like, what is happening? You know?
So from a horror perspective, it's just the genre or the trope would be psychological, because it's just that foreboding of the dark and the luminous, the unknown presence. But yeah, sorry, I had to interject with some horror.
Oh, there's definitely some really good horror elements in there, especially when they do show the scene where they do tear Skywarp in half. It's like you don't even see it. You see it in the shadows, which is pretty cool. But
I was kind of traumatized by that. I'm like, holy shit, this is dark.
no, Daniel,
So
listen,
dark.
Daniel Warren Johnson, he can get very dark, but at the same time, you just say to him, give me more and give it to me
I'm
now.
kind of nervous though, because knowing who's taking over the helm of this, it's like I know how dark he can get to. So where are we going?
You know what? That's something that we're not going to dwell too much upon. But I was actually at the local comic book shop when I went to go pick up issue 24, and I was talking with the manager, and he was basically saying to me, "This is not necessarily an upgrade or a downgrade. You're literally just stepping a little bit to the right, and you're literally getting something just as great, if not better, with this new creative team." I don't read that much of Robert Kirkman besides Void Rivals, and there's going to be a new comic book that he's making in just 2 weeks. Skin Breaker's coming out. Teddy, I know that you read Invincible, so you clearly know about his intensity. And I personally have read a lot of books recently with Dan Moore's art, and Dan Moore is a fantastic artist. So I'm expecting still a lot of fun. I'm not expecting anything better or worse. I'm just expecting exactly what I got when I closed the last page of issue 24, and I'm excited for issue 25. So now we actually see that the Autobots have a little bit of an edge because of the fact that the humans are actually going to help them look for sources that could substitute as Energon, and at the same time they're actually bringing more of their team back online. We see more familiar faces. We're introduced again to Wheeljack, and eventually one of my favorites comes back to life, and that's Jazz. I love Jazz. He is such a great character, and I loved his first initial action sequence in the book. It was great. And then when they officially get to their source, which is going to be, I think it might be the Hoover Dam. I'm not exactly sure if it is the Hoover Dam, but it's definitely a large dam. That's when RC comes back online. And I love RC. She's a great character too.
I cheered. I was so excited to see RC. I was like, yes, 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 she's here. Okay, we can go
And
on.
and I loved that scene when Carly gets caught in the crossfire and she's falling, and RC literally like dives off the dam and says, "I don't know who you are, but if you're important to Optimus, you're important to me." And she transforms into a car, opens her door, and Carly falls right in. Like those are such cool. Like I always had this amazing action sequence in my mind that I think it might have actually happened in the comic book. It was like a scene where there's a human on a transformer's back, and the transformer says, "Hold on tight." Like the human is holding on to the piece of the machine that's eventually going to become the handle on the door, and transforms, slides in, shuts the door, drives. Like that's a sick action sequence. I seriously believe that that's in the book somewhere. But those are like the kinds of action sequences I want to see in Transformers. And wow, do we get those action sequences? We really do. That's another thing I love about independent comics, particularly predominantly seen in the Energon universe. When you pick up that issue and you see that cover page, you are wanting to make, you want to be absolutely certain you are sold that bill of goods. And boy, every single time you get exactly what you paid for.
Yeah, we said that about Void Rivals as well.
Exactly. Well, that's the Energon universe as a whole.
Yeah.
I feel like the art in this book, and it's speaking of the action, it's a good time to raise it. I was scrolling through, it's like in my mind's eye, when I think about what this book looks like, I feel like there isn't a curve in sight. I feel like absolutely everything is angles and straight and jagged and like piercing.
That's Daniel Warren Johnson. That's Daniel Warren
Absolutely.
Johnson.
Yeah, absolutely everything in it. It's like I find that oftentimes things that we think of that are great action are very fluid or very cinematic or very like they grab onto that motion. But I feel like the way that this art conveys that action and gives you a sense of motion is completely different from most of the kinds of comics we talk about and praise the art for, which is specifically that angularity is just so rigid and not clunky. That's not really the word I'm looking for, but the angular, just everything has this heaviness to it. And it works for something like the Transformers because you feel every blow. It's just so heavy and methodical, the kind of fights that happen. So it does the job perfectly.
And speaking of every blow, there is that scene where that battle is so intense, Optimus gets his arm pulled off. And so when things are at their bleakest, I can't remember exactly who it is that's I think it might have been Cliff Jumper that was literally about to die. All of a sudden, there comes Optimus with the arm. He does something that I've never seen Optimus Prime ever do, or imagine Optimus Prime ever doing. But he literally takes that arm and he smashes Starscream with it. I'm like, whoa! Like it's literally. This is Joker with the crowbar on Jason Todd bashing. I'm not kidding. Like, holy cow! Yeah,
It's his own
It's
arm.
his own arm. He hit he defeated Skywarp with that.
yeah.
He takes his own arm off.
He ripped it off himself.
Yeah,
And he just
it's so much
smashes it.
more brutal than where did he get the arm from? Oh, let me tell you where he got
Crazy.
the arm from. He already done had it. Like
And people who know Optimus Prime, you never would imagine in a million years an action sequence like that involving him. You would never see him literally open up that kind of can of whoop ass on a Decepticon. Never, never. But it's amazing.
I definitely think that the scene also that you had mentioned earlier with RC and protecting Carly speaks to the family dynamic of this and how often, you know, they reference the difference between the human family and then the robots and how they try to help each other understand the family dynamic, which kind of brings into, you know, sequences like that where I feel Optimus is the fatherly figure in a lot of ways, and he knows, look, the Decepticons are not backing down. This is an all-out rage war. I feel responsible for bringing it to your planet. Now it's my obligation to fight back and to protect you. And so in primal moments like that, you're like, shit, okay, go Optimus, let's go, it's on now, you know. And there's just so many scenes like that in this series.
Yeah, and because of the fact that he does tear off his own arm, then he gets a new arm, which I believe is Megatron's arm, which is so crazy that they literally just found it lying there. And again, another thing you would never expect. You would never expect to actually see body parts of other Transformers on other Transformers. It's
Yeah.
crazy. It is crazy. And you can tell that when Optimus does what he does, you can tell that he is not happy about the fact that he's got that on his body now. Because
But I think they did a good job of alluding many times that they don't have the same materials. And of course, you hear that a lot from the Decepticon side of the house, but they don't have the same materials to fix themselves. So they're improvising and they're doing what they can to survive. And part of that is, you know, taking on maybe some body parts that they weren't anticipating, but it continues the battle. It continues to let them wage the war that has already begun.
yes, and of course, another couple of things that are alluded to is, you know, when all else fails, there is, of course, what Optimus has, the secret weapon, the Matrix of Leadership. But it really doesn't get used until the very end at a very important point because, of course, one of the few things that does happen as these battles happen, and I also really can't get over the intensity in just 6 issues. It's just like, you know, just when you hope that the good guys are able to rest, here come the Decepticons again, just ready to fight again. And unfortunately, at one point in time, Spike gets severely injured and has to be hospitalized. And of course, you know, you think things could not get any bleaker, but of course, and to a certain degree, if you're a Transformers fan, you kind of know that this is happening. The Constructicons are woken up. And of course, at the end of, I believe, I can't remember if it was issue number 4 or 5, but we're, of course, in the comics introduced to Devastator.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Devastator. Oh, boy.
He's a big boy.
That's the long and the short of it. What a scene. And the panic that breaks out, the towering nature. This is one of my favorite panels for see if you can even count the curves. There's just it's the menacing full page spread. I love it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm just like curious. I mean, like, Teddy, again, you've never seen the Transformer stuff before. What were your first official impressions of Devastator when you saw him?
I honestly don't remember. I'm not gonna lie.
No, I mean, of course, you know, I was just like jumping for joy just to see Devastator because, again, you know it's going to be great. But
Well, honestly, I don't mean to cut you off, but like being that it's my first time and everything, there are so many introductions to new characters that it really, you know, it was a blur for me. So, you know, rereading it did help, but the first time around, you know, it was a great story, you know, great action, great art. There was just a lot of characters, and you know, rereading it is extremely important for anyone that's watching this and is new to Transformers and comics. Reread it. You know, it's very, very important. And, you know, there's a lot of characters and you'll learn to love them.
this battle is too big for this book. This is what you want to see on an IMAX screen in a movie theater. You want to see a battle this intensely gigantic. Like, it's the grandeur and the gravitas. There's no words for how beautiful this battle is depicted on these pages. And with the Autobots literally on their last leg, the ultimate sacrifice is paid not by a Transformer, but by Spike's dad. He jumps into the Matrix of Leadership because another thing that we didn't mention earlier, it is a little bit weird to think about, but another source that actually provides Energon is organic material, which means humans also provide Energon, which is really scary.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think that speaks to the storyline too, because you know, as the Decepticons seek to drain Earth and humans of all their energy, you really kind of, as a reader for me, kind of find yourself battling between, are the humans worth saving, or do I side with the robots here? You know, and I think that was alluded either in issue 2 or 3, where the question was blatantly asked, you know, are these humans worth saving? And then of course Optimus immediately comes in on the next frame and says absolutely they're worth saving, which kind of pops your humanity back into your brain. You're like, oh, I guess we're worth saving. But you know, that said, we cause a lot of problems. We kind of just put ourselves in the mix and crux of things sometimes and assume, you know, kind of like when Carly was trying to explain that not all of the robots were bad, and here they go just blowing all of them up and shooting at them, you know, despite knowing whether they're good or bad. It's like, where's the communication? Which says a lot to the society that we live in, is that, regardless of the storyline that we enter, we lack communication as human beings. We fail to communicate in the most important of times, when it could solve a lot of problems if we would just talk to each other and we would find out what's going on, And I think a lot of these stories do play on your humanity, and they make you kind of question reality versus fantasy, which, that's the whole point of a story, whether it's in a novel or a comic book. But a lot of the times of late, I find, maybe since 2020, I find myself siding with the other species.
By the way, guys, Teddy had to run a family emergency. Just he didn't want to disrupt. So
All good. All
that's
good.
it. Yeah. So yeah. So I mean, and some of these scenes it's crazy. It's literally like you're watching something real, like something out of war, because we see characters like really going through some really intense moments. Like Ratchet loses his leg, and we see Optimus Prime literally rip one of Devastator's fingers right off. It's like it's insane.
Brutal.
It is very brutal. But once the ultimate sacrifice is made, the Decepticons are defeated for now. And again, that's sort of the nostalgic moment that we have there, because it sort of feels very much like the cartoon. It's like, you hear the famous line, Decepticons retreat, like that's a famous moment from the show. And of course, the Autobots, they roll out and they start to regroup and they start to prepare themselves for the next big battle. But it's a great first arc. And the crazy thing is, there's still so many more Transformers that we haven't even seen woken up yet, Autobots and Decepticons alike. We also have to remind ourselves, and that's another thing that I would probably want to press to Andy. It's like, there are some other Transformers out there, but they're not on Earth right now. If you read Void Rivals, you'll find out where some of those other famous faces are right now. And as Void Rivals continues, you will be introduced to some other Transformers along the way. So but you want to know what I love so much about the Energon universe? As of now, you really don't need to read all of them. You can read one title, you can read two titles, you can read them all. I personally want to read them all because I really want to see when there is going to be the really big crossover, because I know it's coming. And I thought what was really funny was, literally yesterday, Robert Kirkman announced that there will be more titles coming to the Energon universe. But he did say, don't expect 570 of them. He says, we want our readers to have means within their budgets. But my question is going to be, what are we going to be getting? I mean, right now, I love what we have. And even up to this point where we are right now, because there's 24 issues of Transformers, there's 23 issues of Void Rivals, there's 11 issues of G.I. Joe, but there was more G.I. Joe that came before the ongoing series in some miniseries, which will be the next part of our Ultimate Journey, by the way. And it's just like Transformers is perfect on its own, truthfully, but I'm personally excited to see where the whole Energon universe is going to go. But I would say, if anything, Transformers is an incredible roller coaster ride that you want to ride multiple times. That's all I'm going to say. And let me just tell you something, you're not going to get sick the minute you get off this ride. You'll want to go right back online and get right back on this ride. So,
as someone who's reading DC All In, this is a lot more palatable too. I find that the All In initiative is very overwhelming, and something like this, where you slowly integrate other series into the universe, is just so much more digestible. And not to mention, when you take something nostalgic, it's really exciting to not only revisit, but you anticipate what's coming. And I like that. So I just, we are always praising the indies. And I think that this definitely exceeds those types of initiatives. Sometimes just vomiting excessive issues isn't the way to go with your audience. You get overwhelmed and it becomes very expensive, very fast. And this is just a lot better on the pocketbook.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%, but I do feel I like the All In Initiative. I mean, I'm not reading every single issue out there, but one of the few things that I know that DC does better than Marvel is when it comes to them doing stuff like this, is they really try to make it a little bit more condensed and a little more streamlined. Whereas you want to talk about vomiting issues, that's Marvel. It's like one event comes out, there's your like 5-issue core story, and here's like 57 tie-ins that you got to read. And
well, I don't know. The All In kind of is doing that right now. I'm kind of overwhelmed, but then again, you know, I said I was all in from the beginning, and I eventually have to be all out just because I can't keep up with it. I just can't. I am so backlogged in DC right now, it's not even funny.
Yeah,
I'd say the good thing about Transformers, by contrast, you know, and for the record, I know this is like an Energon Universe thing. The only book I've read is Transformers, and I really enjoy it. And I also like that it works in that way. I know that there's more. I appreciate the fact that there's more in a digestible way, that you don't need to be reading 50 issues every arc of multiple series. I like that it's a little more accessible to people like that. But just by contrast, because it's my own experience, I'll say for people watching it, you also can just read Transformers and it's a lot of fun. So there is that side of it too, of course.
I gotta be honest with you, Andy. I was gonna wonder if you would even have any kind of curiosity for the other titles, because I gotta say, as great as Transformers is, this is not going to spoil the book at all, but I have to say, I am shocked with how good G.I. Joe is. I love the G.I. Joe series. And that's just because of the fact that it's like, you know, you see Robert Kirkman's writing Void Rivals. Daniel Warren Johnson was up until this point writing Transformers. Josh Williamson is writing G.I. Joe. Now, Josh Williamson is a name that I know and I like, but you know, I don't really compare him or consider him within that specific echelon as Daniel Warren Johnson and Robert Kirkman. But I gotta tell you, I have been shocked with how good G.I. Joe is. And I'm really glad that I took a chance, because I gotta be honest, at one point in time when I was reading the beginnings of the Energon Universe, because the G.I. Joe titles were the last ones, they came out about 2 months after Transformers, I almost said to myself, I don't know if I want to read G.I. Joe, just because of the fact that, yes, I watch the cartoon? Sure. But do I remember the cartoon? Absolutely not. And so I wasn't sure if G.I. Joe would be something that would connect with me. But then I kept saying, I love these other 2 titles. I'd at least like to give the miniseries a shot. And I was shocked by how much I enjoyed them. And I did,
Definitely not a recommendation to avoid everything else. Simply if you're worried you can't enjoy Transformers without reading the entire universe, you can feel safe in jumping into this one to get your feet wet, and if you want to read more, you always can. That's more where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I mean, Void Rivals was the first series. I could have actually just been fine with Void Rivals, but I wouldn't have, because of how much I love Transformers.
But I will sell the heck out of Void Rivals. I'm telling you, Andy, you should join us, because it's a hell of a ride. It's good.
And I'm just like, now I'm just dying to see what Robert Kirkman is meaning, because I gotta be honest with you guys, I have a strange feeling about what nostalgic title could possibly be roped into the Energon universe. And if I'm right, I will just be happy. I think it's Mask.
That would be so great.
I would love to see Mask get roped into the end, because again, you think of those old nostalgic properties, and oh man, does Mask fit into this world.
That would be great.
Robert Kirkman, like Geoff Johns doing the Ghost Machine universe, they're not going to disappoint. They're going to make sure they get the best people on these books. So I would be dying if Mask is actually going to be a title. Who is going to be the writer and the artist on that book? Because one of the few things that we'll talk about in the next story arc is the artist who takes over the artwork in Transformers, Jorge Corona, who is fantastic in this book. He's not doing Transformers anymore. It's Dan Mora. I would love to see Jorge Corona come back with another Energon Universe title, because a lot of people didn't know Jorge Corona that well, unless they read Middle West by Scotty Young. That was like his last really big thing. But what makes him such a talented artist is how well he adapts to different art styles. And again, don't want to get too deep. That will be the next time. But yeah, Transformers is a winner. It was one of the best releases that came out in 2023 into 2024. So I highly recommend, if anything, Transformers. If you're a fan, this is definitely going to be a book that you are going to eat up and you're going to love. So I think that that's going to wrap it up. Sorry that Teddy couldn't be here for the end. He wished us all well. He'll definitely be back again. But anyway, please leave a comment in the box below. Let us know your thoughts on Transformers. You know, we could talk about anything Transformers. You want to talk about the Michael Bay movie? Go ahead. You want to talk about the cartoons? Go ahead. You want to talk about the new animated movie with Chris Hemsworth and Brian Tyree? Go right ahead. We'll talk about Transformers up the yin yang. We will. But we'll be looking forward to our next conversation, everybody. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and that notification bell so you're up to date with all of our latest content. And we will see you in the next one.